Hillsdale counties, Sarah Palmani. Hi, Sarah.
Hello, Mark.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Nice to see you. We don't hear much about a medical examiner here in Jackson County.
No.
We do, if we watch, like a lot of crime shows, medical examiners, they're a part of every crime. But what in Jackson do we need a medical examiner for?
Well, we are tasked by state law. We are a state mandated office, but county run, to investigate cause and manner of death. And so if somebody were to pass away at home, sometimes in the ER, in different situations, we are tasked to investigate cause and manner, what caused that person to pass away.
Is it only when something might be off that there might be something that is other than natural causes?
Sometimes, the majority of our cases are natural deaths, but we are tasked to investigate, of course, accidents, suicides, homicides. But that being said, sometimes people don't have an established medical history, and if they pass away suddenly at home and their family happens upon them, or a friend or a neighbor, then they, if the medical history is not known, sometimes we have to bring them in for an autopsy, or sometimes we can release them and do a paper investigation or records investigation.
Now, we have an MD, that is the actual medical examiner,
Yes.
right?
Yes, our medical examiner for the 3 counties is Dr. John Mano. He's been medical examiner for Jackson County since, I believe, 1987.
Wow. And John Mano watches the show from wherever he is, and we appreciate that, Dr. Mano. Appreciate all you've done in our community. He ran the ER at the hospital for many years.
Yep. And he does the field hospital at Michigan International
Yeah.
Speedway.
Yes, he's saved many lives.
Yes.
This, to me, sounds like a really tough job because you're coming upon a place where something bad's happened.
Yes.
Do you
Yes.
personally, are you out? Do you go out and do things?
I have gone out. I do not routinely go out. I manage the offices. We have 2 offices, one in Jackson and one in Adrian. But the people that almost everybody sees, if you happen to have to deal with our office, are the medical examiner investigators. And they're very dedicated, hardworking people that respond to scenes where somebody has passed away.
Who decides if there should be an autopsy? So if I'm a family member and, oh man, I'd like to know more than whatever the ruling is.
Right. Obviously, we consider every case individually. We look at every circumstance. If we feel the autopsy is necessary, that's usually decided by the chief medical examiner, Dr. Mano. If Dr. Mano determines that a county autopsy is not necessary, usually the body is released to the funeral home. If the family does really want to have an autopsy, they can have a private autopsy arranged through the funeral home.
But before it gets to that point, if they want the county and Dr. Mano decides there's no cost to a family for an autopsy.
Right. No.
How are we dying in Jackson County?
The majority of our cases are definitely the natural deaths, people that don't have an established history. Then our next set of cases that we see the most are accidental deaths, those people that have fallen and injured themselves, people in motor vehicle crashes. People also, we do see a number of drug fatalities, chemical substances. Those numbers are down a little bit in all 3 counties, which is a very good thing. And so the majority are definitely natural, then accident, then suicide, then homicide.
Suicide. Where are we in this county as it relates to suicides?
I think we've seen a pretty steady level. I don't think our numbers are higher than any past year. We usually have suicides every month, unfortunately, but I think we've been pretty steady on that.
And you have to make a ruling based, so if there's a death, and the person was a victim of suicide, but it's not obvious, do you then have to do some investigation to determine whether
Yes.
that was or wasn't?
Yes, we look at every circumstance. So the investigator, when an investigator goes to the scene, they approach the scene, they first talk with law enforcement and emergency medical technician that responded to the scene. They'll collect that information. The investigator then will go into the scene and investigate the body and its surroundings. So they'll look at everything. With suicides, our biggest thing is how did they do that? What's the evidence? And was there any suicide notes, any suicidal ideations? Had they been seeking treatment? We look at everything. We take statements from witnesses, people who knew the decedent the best.
So I can think of some situations where a person might tamper with the scene at a person's death. One, where it is death by suicide, the family doesn't want people to know that. They're trying to hide that. Do you see that? Does that happen?
It happens, but not very often. I think usually people who come upon that situation have so much shock that they don't think that far ahead. But we have had people remove weapons in different circumstances. But it doesn't happen very often, luckily.
And the other situation would be in the event of a murder where
Yes.
the perpetrator has tried to alter evidence at the
Yes.
scene. Do you see that?
I suppose we do see that from time to time. Again, I think usually in the circumstances that we're dealing with, a lot of times it's happened so quickly and it's reported so quickly that the law enforcement are there before the majority of things have gone missing. Obviously, people do try to hide weapons or circumstances. I think in different scene investigations, the things that are hidden the most are drugs. When people come upon a drug overdose or a drug situation, if they were somebody that were doing drugs with their buddy and their buddy goes unresponsive, they sometimes leave the scene with their drugs because they don't want the police to get that.
Does that make it harder then? The evidence is not obviously laid out there for you?
Well, that definitely would make it much harder. We have very good law enforcement in all of our jurisdiction. Very good law enforcement. Of course, we work in tandem with them, and they usually are very good at noticing things, as well as my investigators. Sometimes my investigator at the scene might notice something and bring it up to the law enforcement. So we have a very good relationship with law enforcement, and we like to work in tandem with them. Even though they're in charge of the entire scene and we're mostly in charge of the body, we still like to think that we're a team and we work efficiently together.
We were talking before the show, Sarah and I, about I watch a lot of crime shows, and you don't watch any.
No.
So I bet there's a lot of misconceptions about what we see on TV as to what you really do.
There are. People have to remember that TV is TV. It's not necessarily real. It might be taken from real life circumstances, but that doesn't mean that's what happens in real life. And I have had people call me and say, well, on CSI or whatever, this is what happens.
Yeah.
And I have to remind them, well, this is real life. And I think one of the most difficult things for people is that it takes time. It takes time. If somebody comes in for an autopsy, we have specific steps that we have to do, from scheduling the autopsy, having the autopsy performed, collecting information for the forensic pathologist, and then having him get all of his information back to us. It takes time, and that's hard for people.
Now, what's the difference between a medical examiner and a coroner and a pathologist?
Sure. In state law, Michigan, in 1953, they started the medical examiner system, and they abolished the coroner system. So the medical examiner is appointed by the Board of Commissioners for each county. Obviously, counties can share. So we have Lenawee, Jackson, and Hillsdale County sharing Dr. Mano. And then a forensic pathologist is a physician that's specially trained to do autopsies. And so that's all they do. So we have 2 forensic pathologists that work for us, Dr. Cho and Dr. Pakras, and they work for multiple counties. So that's all they do, is they do autopsies. They're very good at what they do and very professional.
And it takes a while. You said time is one of the things that's a misconception.
Yes, yeah.
Now you have another scene that people see on TV, the police, we got to wait for the medical examiner before we touch anything. Does that happen?
Ideally, it would happen in every circumstance,
Okay.
but many times people have been moved or things are moved prior to our investigators arriving to the scene, and we would prefer that not to happen. Sometimes law enforcement they secure a weapon, is the biggest thing. Sometimes people are moved because EMTs are looking for electrical activity in their body. So it doesn't always happen that way for us.
Well, it sounds like a very interesting job, and really a lot of I think pressure
Yes.
that is on your office, because you are dealing with some very life and death and personal issues in this position.
Yep.
Well, we appreciate you coming in today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, hopefully we never have to.
I hope not.
Well, Merry Christmas. Thanks
Merry
for
Christmas.
being here today.
Thank you.
The Office of the Medical Examiner Regional Manager, Sarah Palmani. Well, next